tried to surprise him with my new affair after we opened our relationship, but it didn't go well. In my next world, I will never trust any man again. Men are so deceptive. I tried to surprise my husband with my affair after we opened our relationship, and the fool decided to divorce me instead. Hey Reddit, my name is Taylor. I'm 28 years old, and I'm married to Lincoln, a 48-year-old surgeon. Lincoln and I have been married for 2 years now. I wouldn't call my marriage with Lincoln blissful because I was unhappy all through the years of our marriage. I have always thought that I married a loving man that cared about my happiness, but the events of the past months have proved otherwise. I'm about to lose everything. I don't even know what to do right now. People always say I married Lincoln for his money, considering the huge age gap between us, but that isn't the case. I married Lincoln for who he is, and not because of his money. People always say older men are more loving, generous, and caring. I honestly found this to be true because Lincoln possesses all of these qualities. But after the wedding, I became depressed. I wanted more for my life. Lincoln is a nice guy, but the age difference between us became a problem. While I wanted to live wild, have fun, and just enjoy life to the fullest, Lincoln was reserved and conservative. Even though Lincoln was very rich, he still preferred to live a low-key life. Life with him was kind of boring, honestly. I noticed all these while we were dating, but I thought I could influence him to change as time went on. That's why I went ahead to marry him. But after the wedding, I discovered it's not easy to change anybody. I wanted to live a flamboyant lifestyle. That is one of the reasons I married Lincoln in the first place. Lincoln is God sent to me. He has changed my life within the few years I have known him, but the only problem I had with him is that he is boring, nothing exciting in our marriage, and even our intimacy is nothing to write home about. Other than this, Lincoln is a kind-hearted person. He makes sure I never lack anything. After our wedding, he opened a jewelry store for me and also got me a car. Lincoln is ready to do anything for me. All I just have to do is ask. One time he told me I was his soulmate and that he could go above and beyond for me, and true to his words, he always did. He placed my retired parents on a monthly allowance, and he is currently sponsoring 2 of my siblings in school. Not just that, Lincoln also gifted my parents a beautiful car for their wedding anniversary. My parents call him the son they never had. Lincoln is so down to earth. Whenever he goes grocery shopping, he also shops for my parents. When I count my blessings, I count him multiple times. But the lack of constant intimacy and fun in our marriage made me depressed. I couldn't afford to lose my husband, so I confided in my best friend Anita, and she made some suggestions, so we came up with a plan. Thinking back now, I regret everything because that was the beginning of my nightmares. On one fateful day after Lincoln had returned from work, freshened up, and had his dinner, I told him we needed to discuss something important. I started by telling him how lonely I was in the marriage and that I wanted us to spice up our marriage. Lincoln was taken aback, but after some minutes, he told me he had heard and would try and work on himself and make some changes. I told him I had some ideas on how we could spice up our marriage. He told me he was willing to try anything just to make me happy. Then boom, I told him we should try and have an open marriage. The look on Lincoln's face that day was something else. He was flabbergasted. After some time, he asked me to explain in clear terms without mincing any words what I meant. I categorically told him that we should try and see other people. He asked me why, and I just told him I wanted to be happy. He smiled and told me no problem, he is down with as far as that makes me happy. He asked me to carry him along and let him know when I found someone. I was surprised because that wasn't the outcome I was expecting. I thought he would make a scene, but he was calm. If only I knew all that was just an act, and that deep down he was boiling with anger, I wouldn't have gone ahead with my stupid plans. That calmness was actually the calm before the storm. My best friend Anita introduced me to some guys. I honestly thought she was helping me and wanted to be happy. I never knew that she had ulterior motives. Anita introduced me to Stanley. Stanley was a cute and loving man, young, vibrant, energetic, and charming. Stanley and I were in the same age bracket, so we had a lot in common. Stanley and I started dating, and everything was going on smoothly. I wanted to inform Lincoln about it, but my best friend Anita advised me against it. She told me to get to know Stanley a little bit before informing my husband about it. I wished I never listened to that devil incarnate. I followed Anita's advice and continued dating Stanley secretly because I was enjoying the flow. I also enjoyed Stanley's company. Stanley wasn't working, so I was the one footing all his bills. I even went on vacation with him to Bora Bora Island. I was the one that sponsored the trip. I lied to Lincoln that I was traveling on a business trip to go source for some jewelry. He believed me because that wouldn't be the first time I would be traveling on a business trip. The 1-week getaway to Bora Bora Island with Stanley was beautiful. I enjoyed every bit of it. I also had time to unwind and be free with my lover because no one knew me there. It was after I returned from that trip that I decided to surprise Lincoln with my new affair. That day he was all relaxed and in a good mood, so I decided to break the news to him. I told him I had good news for him and asked him to guess. He tried to guess, but he wasn't getting it, so I decided to let the cat out of the bag. First off, I refreshed his memory about how he gave his consent and blessings for me to see other people. Guys, guess what? Lincoln told me he doesn't remember anything like that. I reminded him about how he accepted for us to have an open relationship. I went further to explain to him that I have started seeing someone, and it's been 3 months now that I wanted to be sure of the person before I surprise him with the good news. At this point, Lincoln was already fuming with anger. His face was squeezed. I could see wrinkles all over his face, and hell broke loose when I told him about how I went on vacation with Stanley. Lincoln stood up and started making a scene. He took my phone and slammed it against the wall. Before I could make sense of everything that was happening, Lincoln gave me 3 dirty slaps on my face. My face was hot, like someone had poured boiling water on my face. He told me I must be joking if I thought he would ever consent to such a ridiculous thing. He told me he had been aware of everything but was only waiting for me to open my gutter mouth and spill. I was dumbfounded. He told me how he had been monitoring my movement and knew of my every move. Lincoln looked me in the face and told me the marriage was over and that I should get my belongings and leave his house. While I was still trying to figure out everything, he went upstairs and started throwing out my belongings. I was shocked by how everything turned out. I reminded Lincoln how he had promised to go above and beyond for me. I called him a liar and a pretender, and he called me a gold-digging slut. He told me I couldn't eat my cake and have it, and that if I wanted to have an open relationship, I should do that outside of his house, and that he wouldn't tolerate such nonsense under his roof. He told me I would hear from his lawyers soon, and that he would divorce me so I could be free and have all the fun I wanted to have. At this point, it dawned on me that he was serious, so I started pleading with him to forgive me. He told me it was too late and that I should get lost. He threw everything that belonged to me out. Even little things like my toothbrush and underwear were thrown out. After that, Lincoln dragged me outside and told me to get lost. What should I do, guys? I need advice. I think I've used my hands to ruin my home. Please, I need suggestions on how to pacify Lincoln so he can forgive me. I will be in the comment section, so please be nice. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm back to update my story. So Lincoln threw me out that night. My things were scattered on the floor. Worst of all is that Lincoln didn't allow me to take the car he bought for me. He seized my car keys, and he damaged my phone so I couldn't call anyone. One of our neighbors assisted me with her phone to book a ride. My head was hot, so I just went straight to a hotel. I just wanted to think about what to do next. At the hotel, I soaked the bed with tears. The next day I went back to the house because I thought Lincoln was calm already, but nothing prepared me for the embarrassment I got. I arrived there and met Lincoln's mom and sisters at the house. Hell broke loose when they saw me. They started hauling insults at me. Lincoln's mom called me a shameless slut. She said the reason I married her son was because of money and not because I truly loved him. She told me that I didn't only break Lincoln's heart, but hers as well, because she loved and considered me like her daughter. At that point, I couldn't hold my tears anymore. I started sobbing like a kid. I went on my knees and pleaded with them to forgive me and beg Lincoln on my behalf. Lincoln's sisters lost it and started making a scene. They dragged me out and asked me to get lost in their brother's life forever. While all this was happening, Lincoln wasn't at home, so I went outside and decided to wait for him. After a few hours of waiting under the scorching sun, Lincoln arrived. He came down from his car and asked me why I came back. Immediately after I saw him, I started crying and pleading. He told me his mind was made up and nothing could change his mind. Just as he was still talking, he went into his car and brought out a paper. He threw the paper at me and drove inside. I picked up the papers, and lo and behold, it was divorced papers. At this point, I started wailing. It felt as if my whole life had been destroyed. I left for my parents' place because I had lost all hope at this point. My parents were shocked to see me alone because I have always visited them with Lincoln since we got married. They asked about Lincoln and why I came alone. With tears in my eyes, I narrated everything to them. I told them about how Lincoln and I agreed to have an open relationship only for him to throw me out after I went through with it. My parents told me they wouldn't judge the matter until they hear from Lincoln because it's best to hear from both sides. My parents invited him to come over the next day so they could at least hear his side of the story. Lincoln respects my parents a lot, so I was 50% confident that he would listen to them. He even treats my parents like his. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was just thinking and praying about everything. I don't think I have genuinely prayed for anything the way I prayed that night. I wanted a miracle so bad. I wanted my husband. I wanted my luxurious lifestyle back because I was almost broke from staying in hotels and spending money on transportation. After what seemed like the longest night ever, it was finally morning. A few hours later, Lincoln arrived. He ignored me and proceeded to meet my parents. He didn't even greet them properly like he used to. My parents asked for his side of the story, and he proceeded to explain everything to them in detail. He told my parents how I cheated on him and spent his money on riffraffs. He told them how I went behind his back to Bora Bora Island on a vacation, and that I lied to him that I was going on a business trip. To say my parents were disappointed is an understatement. The disappointment was written on their faces. My parents couldn't even utter a word. I guess they were too ashamed to speak. With their heads bowed down and in a low voice, they asked Lincoln to forgive me and forget about everything. Lincoln got irritated by their statement and flared up. He told my parents there was no chance in hell that he would ever forgive me. He told them the marriage was over. At this point, he stood up, and just as he was about to leave, he requested the keys to the car he bought for my parents for their anniversary. Everyone was shocked. The whole room was quiet. He told my parents that since he was no longer married to me, there was no need for them to keep the car. They gave him the car keys, and he called someone to come and pick it up. At that moment, it dawned on me that I didn't even know that the person I married was a heartless monster. I mean, what kind of man takes back a gift he gave out willingly? Only a shameless guy can stoop that low. I never knew he was this hot-tempered. Honestly, I never saw this side of him. Lincoln's selfish actions made me angry, so I signed the divorce papers. Our first hearing will be coming up soon. I will be back soon to update you guys on how everything went. Update. Hey Reddit, here's an update on my story. So our divorce proceedings started and Lincoln made sure I didn't get a penny. I couldn't afford a good lawyer because I was broke. That's how I lost out on everything. I didn't even get a single penny. But I didn't bother because I still had the store. While all this was going on, I kept my manager in charge of the store, and he was giving me updates about everything. After the divorce, I decided to go back to the store because that was my only hope. I arrived at the store on one fateful day, and to my greatest surprise, I discovered Lincoln had sold off the store. I was flabbergasted when I met new faces at my store. At that moment, I proceeded to call my store manager. He categorically told me the new owners of the store laid them off after Lincoln sold the store. I asked him why he didn't inform me, and he reminded me how he tried to call me several times and I asked him to take everything. Honestly, I remembered he tried to call multiple times, but I always told him off because I was in the middle of a messy divorce and didn't want to add more problems to what I was facing. I asked for the store's account and was told Lincoln cleared the account. I almost fainted at that moment. My legs were shaking. Nothing else made sense to me. I never Lincoln was this heartless. He took everything from me. He practically ruined my life. The reason I didn't bother to hire top lawyers to help so I could get half of Lincoln's assets was because of the store. I thought I could fall back on it. Another reason I didn't fight for his properties was because I didn't want people to see me as a gold digger. If I knew he was planning on selling the store, I would have fought in court and torn his properties in half. I bitterly regret everything now. Even my family wasn't spared from his torture. Remember I told you guys he always gave my parents a monthly allowance? Well, he stopped doing that. He also stopped paying my siblings' school fees. Lincoln was never a good man. He was only pretending to be a kind-hearted man. He is so petty and strong-hearted. It dawned on me that Lincoln was on a mission to ruin my life completely. I was completely broke. All the expensive jewelry he bought for me, he took everything. I decided to go confront Lincoln at the house, and I got the biggest shock of my life. I arrived at the house and met my best friend Anita, the one who advised me to cheat on Lincoln and conceal it, at my matrimonial home, ex-matrimonial home. I had to clean my eyes multiple times just to make sure I was seeing clearly. With pain in my voice, I asked her what she was doing in the house when she knew I and Lincoln were no longer together. Guys, my best friend looked me in the face and told me she was in her boyfriend's house. I almost fainted at that point. It took all the strength I had in me to keep standing. She opened her dirty mouth and even called me a fool. She said I was stupid to have cheated on a man that loved me and provided for me and my family. She told me that men like Lincoln are rare. She told me how she had always envied my marriage and always eyed Lincoln. She said a lot of things to me that day. She went on and kept blabbering about how the universe worked in her favor and everything happened because she and Lincoln were destined to be together. I couldn't take any more, so I ran up and met Lincoln in the bedroom. I was shaking and crying. I asked him why he decided to hurt me this much. It's hurt to know that Lincoln moved on just a month after our divorce, and not just with anyone, but with my best friend. Lincoln opened his stupid mouth and told me to stop shedding crocodile tears. He told me he didn't owe me any explanation because we were no longer married, and that I didn't have the right to tell him who and who not to date. I felt betrayed. Just as we were still talking, Anita walked in and asked me to get out, that I didn't have the right to be in the room. She asked me to get out of her bedroom. I thought Lincoln would call her to order, but I was shocked when he seconded it and asked me to get out. Life is really funny. I never in my wildest imagination believed that a day like this would ever come when I would get chased out of my matrimonial bedroom by another woman, not just another woman, but my best friend who brought this disaster on me. I told them I would not leave until I got answers to my questions. I asked Lincoln why he had decided to ruin my life by taking everything from me. He told me he vowed to take everything from me when he realized I never loved him and that I only married him for his money. He said he also promised himself that he would leave me penniless and miserable. Hearing all these made me understand that men are evil. It dawned on me that Lincoln never really loved me because if he did, he wouldn't be able to look me in the face and spill that trash. I cleaned my eyes and left. On my way home, I kept thinking about everything. How foolish of me to have listened and followed Anita's stupid plans. I never knew she had always envied me. I felt betrayed by both Lincoln and Anita. I'm the victim in this case. So many thoughts were just running through my mind. I wanted to get to the bottom of everything because I felt like Lincoln and Anita might have been seeing each other and might have planned the whole thing. So I called Stanley my ex-lover. I ended things with him when I left my marriage because Stanley was broke. I was even the one paying his bills when we were dating, so I didn't want to add another liability to my problems, so I ended my relationship with him. I called him that day because I felt he was also part of the plan. I pleaded with him to please share any information he knows with me, not that I planned on confronting anyone, but for closure's sake. Stanley told me that Anita planned everything. He told me that he and Anita shared all the money I was giving him. He told me that Anita informed Lincoln about our affair when we started dating. It turns out my best friend was my husband's spy. He told Anita had informed Lincoln about our vacation too. Honestly, at that point, I felt like a fool. I felt betrayed and became depressed. Nothing mattered to me any longer. I decided to seek help because it felt like I was going crazy. I started therapy, and honestly, that was the best decision ever. I'm still trying to let go and forgive myself for all my stupid mistakes. Nothing makes sense now, but I would smile again. My therapist made me understand that even though I was a victim, I also in a way broke my ex-husband's heart and trust. She asked me to give him a call and apologize for all the pain I put him through. I tried calling Lincoln several times to apologize, but he never answered my calls. I did send him a text, though. I hope he finds a place in his heart and forgives me someday. As for that fool Anita, I heard Lincoln dumped her after he was done with her. Her karma came early. She got served. She wanted everything I owned, but unfortunately for her, she can never have them. She is back to the street where she truly belongs. It's been months, but everything still seems like yesterday. The memories are still fresh. I'm currently job hunting while I stay with my parents. Every day, my parents and siblings never miss the opportunity to taunt me about how I ruined my life and their lives because of my lust and selfish desires. My siblings hate me, and they still blame and curse me till today. I hope I get a good-paying job soon, so my siblings can go back to school. I'm taking each day as it comes. Looking back, I regret everything. If I could turn back the hands of time, I would have done things differently. Maybe if I had not listened to Anita, I would have still been married. Or if confided in my parents or siblings, just maybe things would have been different. Just maybe.